Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Global Supply Chain Leaders Panel Discussion. I'm Frederick Gomer, partner at B2G Consulting, and I'm extremely pleased to host today this remarkable panel discussion to address a very interesting topic, the future of supply chain. What's next? So let me introduce our guest. We have Kristin Beck. So Kristin is the Global Chief Supply Chain Officer for Holcim Solutions and Products. So I understood that this is a new division for Holcim. So she oversees all topics related to supply chain under this division. One interesting fact for Kristin is she won last year the Global Supply Chain Leader 2021 for GWSCL. So again, congratulations, Kristin, for this award. Next, we have Emer Cunningham. So Emer is based in Ireland. She is the Vice President International Medicine Global Supply Chain. So she has over 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, covering manufacturing, engineering, operational excellence, and of course, supply chain. And she held various strategic roles in Pfizer in operational excellence and portfolio management. Emer also won the Supply Chain Transformation Excellence 2021. So welcome, Emer, and congratulations for your award also. Next, Stephanie Benedetto. So Stephanie is the co-founder of Queen of All, which is a marketplace to buy and sell unused textile, which was founded in 2014 to bring blockchain technology to the textile industry. So Stephanie is also a very strong advocate for women in business and sustainability, and her companies have been featured in many fashion magazines such as Good Morning America, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Vogue, or Elle. Finally, Stephanie won the Supply Chain Sustainability Leader Award in 2021 as well. Congratulations, Stephanie, and welcome to the panel. Now we have our second Stephanie Thomas. So Stephanie is currently an associate professor of practice of supply chain management for the University of Arkansas in the US. So she's also executive director of Women Impacting Supply Chain Excellence. The acronym is WISE. And over the past 4 years, she has helped to grow the student organization, Women in Supply Chain Excellence, WISE, which now involves more than 40 universities all over the world, and also which includes 20 different industry companies. Stephanie won the Supply Chain Academic Excellence Award also last year. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
We have Sophia. So Sophia is our final guest for the panel discussion. She's a young professional, very passionate about supply chain, and she currently works as a senior staffing analyst with Mercato Libre. I'm not sure I pronounce it in the right, with the right accent, in Mexico. And she's responsible for the optimization of the DC operation, demand planning, and capacity analysis. And she also won the People's Choice, what we call in France, or in French, coup de cœur. So that was the award that she won. Congratulations, Sophia, and welcome to the panel. Let's start. So we have spent another entire year battling supply chain disruption, from the 42% increase in cyber attacks in the first quarter to port congestion, labor shortages, COVID-19. So business and supply chain leaders face more than their share of challenges in 2021, and you can witness that. So as the saying goes, every cloud has a silver lining. So the year also presented for many organizations opportunities to learn and adapt to those unexpected circumstances. So there is definitely pressure coming from all fronts to adapt and change. And as we start the year, what awaits to the challenges and opportunities in store for supply chain? That will be the question that we will be addressing today, the future of supply chain. So let's start straight to the point with the first question, which is for me, what is the future of supply chain and what does it mean to you? So I will start with Kristin, if you allow me. So what does it mean for you?
I think what it means to me is it's really all about proactive risk mitigation these days. So I think that we've now seen it all. We started a couple years ago off with a pandemic, the likes that we've never seen. We've been able to work through it. I think now of us are all faced with a high inflationary environment, huge raw material shortages everywhere that we look, where we're dealing with labor shortages, as you already mentioned, Frederick, capacity shortages, you name it. I feel like we're dealing with it. And so we need to be prepared for anything and everything at this point. And so it's about people, processes, systems, right? Making sure that we've got the right technology. Again, making sure that we're ready for everything. And again, it's that proactive piece where owning our own destiny, right? Don't wait until the floor drops. Be ready for it, right? Be looking for it and have the technology and people in place to deal with it together.
Okay, proactivity, technology and enablement. So Emer, do you agree? Do you have a different perspective, or do you want to add anything to Kristin's points?
Yeah, I'm not sure, different perspective. I mean, I think I would agree with a lot of what Kristin has said. I think if I look at our own situation, we were in a situation when other supply chains did crumble. Actually, we did see ours survive and actually thrive. And we're very proud of that. But it is actually as a result of a lot of the things that Kristin has talked about. And as I look at the future, I think that's the future, where we become this competitive advantage, where supply chain is not a business operation to the side, but is actually something that a company leans into and said, actually, a part of what makes us the best at what we do is our supply chain. It's that effective systems, our processes are designed to suit our customers, our patients, and our processes run really well. I do agree with Kristin on the proactive risk assessment and mitigation. I think that's going to be huge going forward.
Yeah, so supply chain as a core asset, I like it. I won't disagree with you. So Stephanie, what's your view on the future of supply chain? Maybe you will add a more perspective more on the fashion supply chain, or do you have a broader view?
No, happy to do so. And it's been interesting, of course, to see, as we all said, what was broken with supply chains and where those opportunities to fix those breaks in the chain were. When it came to fashion, a lot of people, when the pandemic first hit, were afraid that, fashion is dead. Well, unless we're all going to go naked, fashion is going to continue to survive. And in fact, through the pandemic, it thrived. Just how we consumed it, what it's made of, where it comes from, who it goes to. That's what's shifting. And obviously a lot of that, especially in fashion, but across supply chains and around the world, is driven by what the consumers want. And I think we've seen in so many ways, the pandemic has awakened in people what really matters. It's people, it's planet, it's what's touching our bodies and our skins and going in our mouths every day, right? Has to be healthy and safe. And so, yeah, it was a huge opportunity for what we are doing in our business. And as we look towards the future, I get really inspired by the past and by my great-grandfather. I think of the way he did business, right? He found materials and supplies nearby to him. He would create things by hand, minimal waste and minimal toxins, and he'd sell to local customers. And it was a very profitable, successful business. Now, of course, all of our supply chains here, they're global, a lot more complicated than my great-grandfather's day, but I think we can use all the tools we just talked about, like technology, and get towards that supply chain of the future that is inspired by that, one that is more on demand, local, digital, custom, sustainable, right? I think that's what we learned through this.
Perfect. Sophia.
Yeah, I think what Stephanie has said about how consumers change their behavior. I think that at least in the e-commerce business, we found out that, yeah, for sure, people start buying more. They had more time to spare, I guess, or at least the click to select what they wanted was easier than before. And that perhaps also affected how we consume fashion, right? Among other products. And that's at least what we've seen in e-commerce and how it has grown. But it also highlighted how, okay, well, you have a marketplace, but still the power to get the things physically to the customer, those links of physical movement were highly dependable on people, right? And if you don't have people, you cannot deliver. And at least for us, that was our main goal. How can we make sure people are safe and people can come back to work and be working with us without affecting first their health, their families, and then the business itself, right? So yeah, I think at the end, the highlight we've been shed on by the pandemic has been not only that supply chain matters, but also that it is here to stay and be better.
Yeah, I agree. Stephanie, Thomas, so what is your perspective probably on the academic standpoint?
Well, one of the exciting things, and I think this goes into the topic with the future of supply chain, is in a lot of ways, we're no longer the best kept secret in business. It's like suddenly everybody knows, oh, what is this thing? And I know for a lot of universities continue to add supply chain programs and degrees and areas of study. And as that continues to grow, as somebody who sees that, there's so many students that enter my classroom that have never heard of it before. And then they're like, oh, this is amazing. You know, this is what I want to do. We're starting to pull down that barrier and people are becoming more aware of it. Oh, there was a really big boat that got stuck and that caused problems. That's a supply chain thing. There's things that people can relate to now that I think the word is going down younger with talent. And I think that means we're going to have more talent coming up through the pipeline, because I know that's something that every company is struggling with right now, is how to find enough and really good talent at the same time, because we need great people to solve complex problems. And the good story is more of those students are coming into universities with that kind of focus. And I know a lot of universities are also trying to start to partner with lower schools and spread the word about supply chain so that we are kind of snowballing to bring more talent in, because I agree with second everything everybody has said, but the people piece of it, especially from where I sit in academia and close to students, is what's near and dear to my heart, is helping to fill that pipeline. And there's a lot of really positive movement as a result of the last few years.
True. I think at least at for my generation, the supply chain was not necessarily a first choice. First supply chain did not really exist as supply chain. It was more the logistics. So I think we have now less effort to convince the new generation to join and be part of the talent pool, especially considering the global shortage that we have in supply chain. It will definitely help. So I think that's at least a positive aspect.
Well, now, real quick, Frederick, I'll throw in there and say the good news too is I'm seeing more and more young women coming into supply chain too, where when I started in academia, it was much heavier on the male student side of things. And there's a lot of young women who are just really excited about the careers in supply chain and the opportunities. And so that's going to increase diversity overall, which is a win for everybody.
We'll definitely talk about diversity later on, but that's a good point. Now on the resilience, so I'm reflecting on Kristin's comment, knowing that it's now important for companies, considering the experience that they had to go through during COVID-19, which is not finished, and all the disruptions which resulted from that. So do you have any advice, maybe experience from what you did in your respective companies, respective organizations, to build a more resilient supply chain? Do you have any good initiatives, interesting initiatives that you would like to share? Would like to start? Emer, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, I think when we first started to pivot, we had some experience of, you know, a previous event. So Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico was a big event that impacted the pharmaceutical business. And we started to pivot for COVID-19 and taking some of those lessons. But actually, I think we've really stepped it up and it's completely changed, right? So the speed at which supply chains had to pivot over the last 2 years has meant we've had to go right back to supply chain design, right? So how do you design a supply chain to deliver to the customer when they need it, where they need it? And we've had traditional ways of doing that. We did value stream mapping, we've done the end-to-end view, which we still use, but now we say, okay, but how do you crack some of those walls? How do you break the red tape? How do you change the bureaucracy? How do you move the decision making? But I think that resilience piece is the piece that comes back to us every time to say, okay, we're moving fast, but what we do has to last, and it needs to be agile, and it needs to flex. Because if we have another pandemic, another Hurricane Maria, another canal incident, we all need to be able to pivot. Unfortunately, there's no one silver bullet, right? It's the full organization, understanding the supply chain, understanding what needs to be delivered. But I think as we look back in 10 years' time, we're going to look at this period and say it was a huge disruption in how supply chains are designed and delivered.
Yeah. There's not necessarily a right answer to every crisis. It's more defining a framework for managing the crisis, which is important to me. So, Kristin, do you have any examples that you would like to share on how you built more resilience in your supply chain at Holcim?
Yeah, so I'd like to build up what Emer just said, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, to me, it's about true integrated end-to-end, and I'm going to call it value chain, because I liked how you shared that we're truly showing value now. I think folks can't live without a strong supply chain these days. I think it really starts, we talked a little bit about that proactive risk mitigation. So starting in the very beginning, from a procurement perspective, it's supplier diversification, right, to reduce risk. We don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. We also want to have ample testing. We need to have backup plans, right? We can't move forward in this environment that one is going to lead us to success, right? I kid you not, we just every week, sometimes you can't make this stuff up, right? You feel like you've got your supply chain back, and then domestic chlorine suppliers go down. That's essentially supporting the supply that you need, right? Or a boat gets stuck in the middle of the ocean. So again, it's about making sure that from a diversification perspective, you're not solely reliant on not only just one supplier, but you also mentioned the hurricane, right? And we had the deep freeze that we dealt with last year. So not just being reliant, quite frankly, on domestic, right? We need to look global. We need to look internationally, again, to make sure that we truly have a backup plan. If we have a deep freeze and we have a big chemical companies go down in Texas and across the Gulf, then we need to be ready to pull in from Europe, from Asia Pacific, right? To help uplift and keep our supply chain running. I think another really interesting piece that we've been looking at, we used to talk about inventories and how we wanted to keep inventories lean, right? Because inventories are money. Who knows what inventories are anymore, right? It's really hard to actually start to build inventories. So again, being very open to try to going after supply when it might be available. It might not be the right time, but it might not be available when you truly need it later on in the year. So looking at your storage, right? Do you have ample storage? Do you need to change your storage strategy, again, to take advantage when your critical raw materials might be available to you? And then lastly, I'm going to kind of throw something out there that's been really successful for us. I would say that historically, the majority of us have been very dependent on our suppliers for delivery, right? So most raw material goods are typically supplier setup from start to finish, supplier delivered, versus you having your own logistics team actually getting involved in your inbound deliveries. I will tell you that we are getting very involved in our inbound deliveries now. We've actually created a brand new inbound logistics team that work now directly with our suppliers, validating all those key master data elements that typically we focus on just the outbound side and not the inbound side. I'll throw you an example. We brought a new chemical company, a wonderful partner online. I set this new team up to essentially confirm lead time, transits, all those really important key points when you're operating just in time without any inventories. And they shared a transit and they shared it was going to be a couple of weeks. And so we took it a step further, and then we went to the class 1 that was actually supporting this chemical company, and we confirmed what is the true transit to go from point A to point B. Well, it wasn't 2 weeks, right? It was actually 4 weeks, which was a huge difference, especially when we have no inventories, and we would have essentially shut down our plants for two full weeks if we wouldn't have diverted another supply in to then cover, right, that additional transit period. So to me, I guess in sum is kind of taking control of your own destiny. I feel like in the past we've been very reliant on others to just make it happen, and then you keep your fingers crossed and you hope that it happens as planned. I feel like we are in a day and age where we can start to control that though. And I think as part of that, you not only increase the collaboration between you and your suppliers and your customers, as well as transparency, but you're building healthier and stronger relationships that I think will sustain the test of time and the challenges that we have yet to come.
Yes, collaboration, transparencies are extremely important, and we've seen that during a crisis. Those are the key key ways of working better with our suppliers. We always talked about that, I would say, in supply chain collaboration, and that's why we call it a chain, by the way. But it was not very effective. It was more transactional, and we've seen how important it was during the crisis to actually a company with its supplier is just one. So that's definitely important aspects. So Stephanie Benedetto, I have to mention who exactly. What is obsolete? What should companies be leaving behind, and maybe you've already left behind now?
I think what was so interesting, this kind of also touches on your prior question and the need for true value chains, is that going through the pandemic, in the beginning, at least, it was about surviving, right? And when it comes to surviving, at the end of the day, it is about the unit economics, right? You need to look at your profitability and your bottom and top lines and what's going to drive that so that you can survive, so that now we can go into thriving. And I think sometimes in the conversation, especially in the work that I do in sustainability in supply chains, with that S word, sustainability, it means so many things to so many people, but they automatically assume that it has to cost you more money to participate. And in the beginning of the pandemic, we were able to shift that conversation, and working with some of our Fortune 500 companies show that by adopting our solutions, here's how much money was saved and made that allowed them to survive through the pandemic, right? And for example, let's look in what I do at businesses waste. For so long, supply chains moved really fast, really quickly, right? And just kept making more and more and getting your finished good to your end customer. But now there was this opportunity during the pandemic where unused inventory, raw materials, and finished goods had piled up, sitting in warehouses, and it was eating up to 15% of some of our businesses' bottom lines for that year, right? And at that volume, it's not just irresponsible for the environment and people, it's also a CFO issue. And so by looking at businesses' waste and inefficiencies, they can sell that waste, recycle that waste, right? Free up that warehouse space, and then take all the money that they saved and made and put it back into doing all the good work that Kristin and everybody just talked about in their supply chain. You can then pay your workers more, pay, for innovative, sustainable materials, pay to start to digitize your supply chain without your CapEx expenditure going up at all. And I think kind of that has been what's so powerful to see, these kinds of opportunities there for businesses to improve their bottom and their top line. And I think it forced the hand, especially for some of the large enterprise companies who were still doing things maybe the way my great-grandfather did in 1896 with good old pen and paper, or maybe managing their supply chain on an Excel spreadsheet. Now they had to digitize and innovate quicker, but they're only stronger because of it. And that for us was the real opportunity, and why we built the software and tools that we did to support our customers.
Yeah, I see three main, I would say, legs to the future of supply chain. One is technology, definitely, and we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning. We talk a lot about sustainability, as you mentioned, Stephanie, which is a growing concern, growing matter in most organizations. There are now a lot of initiatives launched around sustainability and making supply chain more sustainable and people. Okay, so we'll address those three elements separately. So on the technology piece, so what is, we've tried to digitalize the supply chain as much as possible. It hasn't been always a success. So what is missing, according to you, to make the supply chain more digital? And I will ask the question to Stephanie Thomas.
Great question, and I probably don't have as much perspective as some of those working more closely into it. I feel like on my personal side with the technology, there's going to continue to evolve and be advances, but companies and industries are going to continue to be at different levels. And so that creates some imbalances and stuff as how you do things that can bring everybody together. I'm still a big believer of, at the end of the day, regardless of where technology takes us, it's the people and the processes. Technology is still an enabler, and you have to have the right people and the right processes to be successful. I know companies that I deal with are struggling with the amount of data and how to use all the amount of data. And I know there's a lot of different ways people are trying to slice and dice that. And I think whoever is able to kind of solve those problems are going to be the ones that end up leading the rest of us. But I know it's one of those big complex puzzles that people are continuing to figure out. And that's why we continue to need new fresh talent with new ideas and new skill sets to bring that to the table, which means universities have to continue to stay connected to industry and have those ongoing conversations that we can't teach archaic principles. We have to stay up with what's going on, or we're not going to have skills students that are ready to go out and make an impact in the world.
Okay. Kristin, on your side, have you faced any challenges in your digital journey? I know that your sector is usually more traditional. So is there, in terms of digital journey, where are you currently, and have you faced any challenges?
Yeah, so I would say actually we're quite advanced. I'm all about digital and technology, right? I want to have the best. I want to have data at my fingertips. So we were very fortunate. Prior to going into the pandemic, we had already started going down the road of investing in, Gartner rated #1 and #2 technology that are out there. And we've also been very fortunate then to have this, I would say, next gen technology available to us. To me, what the game changer is, and I think my fellow colleagues have mentioned it, we're in a very dynamic environment right now. So we're looking to be agile, nimble, swift, right? We don't have hours and hours to try to dissect data to figure out how we should move forward. So the real game changer for me has been, I'm going to call it real-time what if scenarios and options, right? So essentially you cut off a plant, right? Or you cut off a supplier, and you essentially have master data and technology at your fingertips that is essentially recommending this is your next step. And Stephanie, I love where you were going with profitability, because that's the name of the game, right? #1 is safety and sustainability right next to each other. Those are, I won't even say it's a priority in our company, it's who we are, it's what we do. #2, it's got to be about profitability though. So we got to make cost-driven decisions. And so again, to have data that's essentially optimizing your network, optimizing your solution based on cost, based on the options that are available to you. Not only, again, just domestically, but looking at import options, looking at other options that perhaps your network currently isn't optimized to use, but having them at the ready, being proactive, having them at the ready. So when something does happen, in a flick of the switch, right, a press of a button, your next course, right? Versus spending days, weeks, months really trying to figure out what to do. So again, kind of going into that real-time environment. I love AI, right? I love, we've also implemented a lot of AI where, when you think about supply chain, right, it starts with your demand, right, your forecast going into your production and then to your final sales, keeping an eye on everything, right? We all know that things don't go as planned, right? If they did, we wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't be here. And I feel like our little supply chain universe wouldn't be as exciting as it is. So again, also not only having options available to you, but truly ensuring that what you think is going to happen is happening. Because if you take your eyes off it for just a moment, right, and you don't have that automation that's like monitoring, you could find yourself with what we like to call the perfect storm, where you're either underproducing and overselling, you're overproducing and underselling, and you find yourself in a bit of a pickle there if you're not watching as things progress.
Good. Now back on
I
sustainability.
would like
Yes,
to add
go ahead,
something.
please.
Sorry.
Please go ahead.
The thing is, perhaps I'm a bit skeptical about all these fancy words of AI, real-time data, and technology. And perhaps it's on my perspective, because I'm very close to operations, and also I'm in the developing world, and I'm very close to companies that are in Latin America and that are getting started and getting just their foot into technology and data-driven decisions. And for me, I think that, okay, it all sounds very good, and we all would love that, like, super nice reality. But I think that first, as Stephanie Thomas was saying, yes, we need talent and we need people with skills. But apart from that, we need the right environment for those people to actually implement solutions, right? Because even though if you hire the best programmers, the best data scientists, and the environment is not ready for them to implement solutions, then it's as good as not having any of them at all, right?
Okay.
So I think that companies, yes, especially the ones that are thriving or that are getting bigger, and also at the end of the day, they're very focused on putting fires, day-to-day fires. And growth is good, thriving is good, but also it takes time for you to actually plan and take a step back and say, okay, how can I do this in a better way rather than in a reactive way? And I think that at least there should be a way or a team that is especially tasked to try to make things better, to process improvement, and to do implementations of technology.
Well, the good news about a lot of the technology that we're building and others that we're seeing are building is it requires no more than a smartphone to use, right? And if we're doing our job right, you don't have to worry about the blockchain or the machine learning or, the software in the marketplace. You just need a phone, you read the results, and you can act on it, right? And that's really what we hope to do, is to give the information to businesses, small to large, to be able to take action. And for larger companies to be able to take action automated and at scale. And I think that too often gets a little bit lost in the sustainability conversation and in supply chains. People think that doing some of these projects are just good for just that, projects, eco-conscious collections, little pilots. But no, when you can show them that this can be done automated and at scale and drive huge bottom and top line value, then I think we really will have the global connected systemic change. Just one quick example, one of our Fortune 500 customers actually saw 3 times the conversion rate in their online direct-to-consumer business, just by taking the data reporting and talking about the good work they were doing in their supply chain. So those, I think, are more of the kind of conversations, the numbers that we have. And that's why technology is just driving that, but it's just a conduit to get the business result you need.
Yeah, but it's all about simplifying, right?
Yep.
That's why I hear and I echo. Like, you should be able to simplify it, chew it, and being able to give it in a more simple way. For us to actually take action, right? Because if you go and say all those fancy words to someone, they'll be like, yeah, but how do I do it, right? How do I get it done?
Yes.
But I guess that goes to the talent that Stephanie talked about, right? I mean, that's some of the talent that we're looking for, is the ability to look at complex problems and data and technology and succinctly boil that down and make a recommendation, make a decision. I mean, what's the purpose of having data if you're not using data to drive decisions? Otherwise, it's just interesting information. Now, I agree with you, Sophia, the culture is so important in terms of how we implement those decisions and that those decisions drive us forward. But at the end of the day, otherwise technology is just technology for technology's sake. It's not actually moving us forward. So it's that ability to drive decisions. And I think that's where we're really relying on Stephanie and her ilk to bring talent forward that are able to take that data and turn it into real live information scenarios is what it means, and let's take a decision and move forward.
You have a very strong responsibility, Stephanie Thomas, to bring to the world the next generation of talent in supply chain. And talking about that, what would be the and it's an open question for you. What would be the skill set that you would be looking for the future talent pool that you are looking at? We talked about data. We talked about technology. We talked about sustainability. But what are the skill sets that you would be looking at? And I would like to have the views of Emer.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Friedrich, and I think everybody's talking about talent at the moment, you know, but what do we mean by talent? And I suppose one thing I do feel about supply chain is not a single discipline. Yeah. There's so many parts to supply chain. You know, if you talk about forecast, demand, or you're talking about supply chain design, risk assessment, logistics, there are so many disciplines that we're not necessarily just looking for supply chain professionals. We're looking for people who have business acumen, who can use data to drive decisions, who learn quickly, because we're bringing people into an industry from other industries. So we want them to come in, absorb our culture, but use their skills to help us move forward. So I don't think it's sensible to say it's just this or it's just this. So we're looking for the best talent everywhere, right? So we're looking for the ones that are driven. We're looking for the ones that are data driven, but we're also looking for the ones that can sense the environment, tell us what's happening, give us a view into the future. So I think supply chain, and I know you're going to get to this question, I think it's a great career for women because it has such breadth. You can pretty much do whatever you want in supply chain. So we should be creating those paths for as many people as we can.
Yeah. So what is the best talent for you, Kristin? How would you define? How would you portray the best talent in supply chain?
So I would say that I'm specifically looking for entrepreneurs, right? Positive, motivational. I'm looking for change agents, right? I'm all about continuous improvement. I feel like if we're not moving forward, we're going to be left behind. I couldn't agree more with everything that Emer said. We can't just have one type, right? One type doesn't make a team, right? Again, you have to have a really diversified portfolio of talent, but we want to move forward, right? We want to see what's next. And so we're looking for folks that will inspire and will take essentially what we've got right now and then just turn it into something, you know, that amazing next step of the future.
Yeah. So talking about the diversity and seeing more women in supply chain, we'll all agree that we want to see more women in supply chain, and I think that you are living proof of having more women in supply chain around this panel discussion. So what would be the, I would say, your wish in terms of diversity, and what does it bring to the table today, having a more diverse team? Question to whom?
But maybe I would just comment and say, for me, I mean, I want our teams to reflect our patient base, right? So if we're serving 50% women, then our team should be 50% women. We should be representing minorities in countries that we're supplying product to, because otherwise we're not understanding our customer base, right? So that to me is what diversity means. It means you reflect your customer base so that you can really understand what they want. And yeah, we need 50% women, and we certainly don't, right? And that means 50% all the way up, not just at the, you know, senior manager levels, but trying to really create it right up through the organization, because it brings such a breadth of thought and ideas, and it reflects the people that we serve.
Stephanie Thomas, you mentioned that you are seeing more women in universities. So is it a positive trend? Is it where is it coming from, according to you?
I think in a lot of ways, a lot of faculty at universities are trying to rebrand supply chain.
Okay.
you don't have to drive a truck or a forklift. You can do other things with it, and creating more awareness about the relational aspect of a lot of supply chain roles, the creative problem solving, the things that tend to be a little more enticing to young women that may be not in the past were as focused on. I think there's more intention of who is being put in the classroom. For example, I teach an intro level class for supply chain management that's required for all business majors here at the University of Arkansas. I have industry experience in the field. So as a female talking about how I worked and what I did, suddenly now there's I can imagine me doing that instead of, so the representation matters type of thing. The problem is there's not a ton of gender diversity in a lot of supply chain faculty. So that's another kind of area that we can go down. We're getting more generations of young women whose parents, mom or dad or whoever, worked in supply chain and have said, hey, this is a good field. And then sometimes kids are taking tests in high school that say, here's your, characteristics. We think you would be good in supply chain. And they're like, okay, because the test told me this, I'm going to go pursue this as an area of education. And then there's a lot of, my friend did this, or my brother or my sister or whoever, and however it's working, we're great bringing the world like more knowledge about it. And I think Emer said earlier, it's that breadth of, as I tell my students, if you're a right brain person, there's something for you in supply chain. If you're a left brain person, there's something for you in supply chain. So if you're kind of an analytical person, or if you're a more creative problem solver, if you kind of got both, I think that's the ultimate sweet spot if you can do all of it. But I struggle to find a student that couldn't find themselves in a supply chain role because there's so many different options. And that is becoming more attractive to young women, and they're not afraid to go into operating environments or work in offices, and the flexibility to pursue careers. And I think as a field, companies are learning how to sell supply chain roles in a way that's more attractive than they used to in the past.
And we have more and more role models as well. Yeah.
And what's so interesting, I think I looked at the latest report, and women's purchasing choices, I think, impact up to 85% or more of decisions in households. So if that's only one, sex is only one piece of the diversity puzzle. Of course, there's also ability, age, race, all the obvious. But if you don't have that representation in your company, you're missing out on the single largest economic force in the world and their decisions. So, if that isn't enough proof beyond all the other obvious reasons why we need more diversity, that hopefully it's coming.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's
Yes.
also very important, as all of you have mentioned, to be able to see yourself in someone else.
Yes.
And like, at least for me, I get super excited whenever I find out about a Mexican woman in supply chain. I'm like, wow, okay, I want to be her, and it's super cool. And I think we should highlight people more like that. And I think these awards that we've been part of, I think those are opportunities to highlight those kind of women, right? And to be able to see yourself in someone else. And additionally, I would say that perhaps the generations that are coming, they are all very about finding purpose and belonging to the company. And that is very sweet and very unique, that I think we can leverage on that. If we're able to tackle those or push those buttons on this generation, we'll keep them and retain them forever. And I think that's something very important right now, because we want women not only to get into supply chain, but we want women to keep rising in supply chain, right? And stay there.
Hopefully, yes. So for the final words, I would like to have your words, a few words about how the future of supply chain will be. So it will be more, and I would like to have a few words. So let's start by Kristin. The future of supply chain will be more.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will be more. I think that it will continue to be probably one of the most prevalent organizations that are out there, especially in these challenging times. And I would say that right now, I really feel like the sky is the limit. I think that not only do we have the ability to positively influence our companies, but Stephanie, I was reading your bio. Oh my gosh, I'm so impressed by where you're going in the sustainability space. You know, we want to change the world. Sophia, you warm my heart with your passion, and I love that. So I would say that not only do I think this is just going to be a continued really prevalent field, but it's a field where we truly can change the world for the better together, right? And so let's continue to positively influence not only our own employees, but our customers, our vendors, those that we work with, and do it in a way, Stephanie, as you were sharing, you know, more circular, right? How can we really improve our footprint? Not only just on the environmental aspect, but Frederick, you know my passion, right, on the people aspect as well. And, you know, Sophie, you had made a mention just a while back, just around you can't have technology without the right people. You're right. It's got to be about the environment. You got to set a positive environment, a motivational culture where people feel valued, right? And I feel like that's what we can bring to the table. Not only can we do amazing things, but we ensure that people come along with us and they feel really good at the end of the day.
It was more than a few words, Kristin, but thanks for summarizing all the words for all the participants. So if you have to if you have to define the future of supply chain in few words, how it will be more what, Emer? In few words.
So I think, yeah, supply chain as a function will be more integrated in the business.
Okay.
And I think supply chain as a career will be more enjoyable and more flexible. And I think supply chains themselves will be resilient, agile, and sustainable.
Stephanie, Benedetto,
more impactful, building solutions that truly make sense for people, planet, and profit. So as Kristin said, we can go change the world.
Stephanie, Thomas, the supply chain, the future of supply chain will be more
inclusive. So beyond just being diverse, putting diversity together isn't going to answer or solve the problems. You need to have inclusive environments so that everybody feels welcome.
Perfect. Sophia?
I would say the future would be more multinational, like various people from everywhere in the world. That's what I want to see.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. So we have reached the end of our discussion. So I'd like to thank our outstanding panel for sharing their insights. It was great having you for today. So I hope that you enjoyed the session on the future of supply chain. So thanks a lot and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.